Hello. We've had a lot of interest in our project-based learning webinar series, but because this is a new way of learning for all of us and it starts in September, a number of people have asked for more details and also asked how it would actually work in practice. So hopefully this following clip will explain it. We're hoping to run two cohorts. One would be, because it's a live webinar, one would be a European group, and the other would be an Australian and New Zealand Far East group as well. It's exactly the same course, and it's over 6 weeks, 2 hours a session, and there'll be a little bit of homework that we expect you to do collaboratively. I just want to say one more thing before we get into it, which is to say that I know for many people right now, you're thinking practicalities, you're thinking social distancing, how are we going to manage with kids, keep them safe. So doing projects is probably the last thing on your mind, but I would ask you to bear in mind, firstly, that actually having kids working in small pods is a very safe way to teach these days, and that's what would be happening when they're working on projects. The second thing is that for a lot of our kids, I think they've been probably working on socially purposeful activities when they've not been in school, and I think they're going to expect that rather than a steady diet of catching up and worksheets. So I would hope that for those two reasons, if you haven't yet signed up for the program, you'd think about it. So the introduction to project-based learning, this video is not to give you a potted history of project-based learning, but just to give you module by module description of what you could expect. So the first week, we'll look at project-based learning, what it is, how it's changed over the past 10 to 12 years, because it has dramatically. What are the key components within a project? And we'll also share with you some of the exemplars of great projects from the US, from the UK, and from Australia as well. We've been lucky enough, my wife and I, to work with some great schools like XP in Doncaster, schools like High Tech High, schools like the Liga Leadership Academy in Cambodia, and we're going to share some examples of great projects from some of those schools. So that's about finding the inspiration for projects. In week 2, we'll start to get you to do some outline design of your projects. And in order to help you do that, we're enlisting one of the founder High Tech High teachers, Katie Staff, who will walk you through one of her projects, how she gets from the initial idea right through to the kind of final plan. Because what we've discovered is that people often have really good ideas, but don't know how to turn that into a rigorous, curriculum-oriented, standards-based project. So Katie's had 20 years of doing that, and we're going to be bringing her in to work with you on that. We'll also look at the concept of critique, because that's a really important part of project-based learning, how students develop critical thinking, and we'll give you a number of tools for doing that. And as with every other stage of this program, we'll give you practical examples. So you'll be doing what we call a gallery walk. And finally, on this module, we'll be introducing you to the ideas of multiple drafts, that students never submit the first draft of a project. And we wouldn't expect you to. Your ideas for your projects will be in a very preliminary stage at this point. This whole stage is really about ideation. When we get into module 3, we start to look at how do you organize the project, because the teacher's role in project-based learning is to be a project manager, and you need to be making sure that students are using that independent learning and working collaboratively, productively, and that they're not going to fall through the cracks. So we'll look at things like formative assessment, how it differs in projects. We'll look at group planning, how you ensure that groups are going to work effectively with one another, and how you manage that process. What are the check-in points? What are the key milestones that you need? Where are the points at which some direct teaching might come in useful? And we'll share with you a couple of case studies around that, how people who've been doing this for a very long time have managed their projects. By the time we get to Module 4, we're into what we call a simulation stage, which is we put you in the position of being a student, and we do what we call a project slice. So that begins with a critique of the model. So we'll take a piece of work and then we'll break it down, see how it works, why is it an effective project. After we've done that, we'll then set you a slice of a project which you'll be working in small groups on. And you'll, some of that you may well take into your private study time. We'll look at the whole business of roles. But how do you ensure that projects aren't just a free-for-all, that each student knows exactly what is required of them, and not just what their learning will be, but what they will produce to evidence that learning. And then we'll look at mechanisms that people have used for project management, including our own project planning tool that we've got. When we get to week 5, it's about consolidation. So the first thing that we'll do is to get you to share what you've learned through doing that project. So you will present your project slides to one another, but you'll also present it to Martin Said from XP School in Doncaster. Martin's had many years of doing project slices with teachers as an example of professional learning. And so Martin will be feeding back on that. People still to this day at High Tech High talk about Martin's own presentation of learning that he did when he visited High Tech High. And he's a great pal of ours, and that'll be a lot of fun to work with him to get Martin's feedback on that. We'll also look at the exhibition, how students will present their work to a public audience. And that's a critical part of doing successful projects. And we'll look at the project timeline. How do you ensure that the workload is fair and balanced, and that you're not doing what we call a bigger than Ben-Hur project and you're trying to do it in 3 weeks, which is often a mistake that people make when they begin to do projects. By the final module, we're then looking into the evaluation. So we're looking at what would you do after the exhibition? How do students reflect on their learning? Because that is one of the most powerful parts of this process. It isn't just about the output, the thing that they produce, the product or the service, but it's about the ways in which that they reflect upon their learning. So we'll look at things like presentations of learning. We'll look at student learning conferences. We'll also take you through a project tuning exercise, which you can do with your peers in terms of your own planning process. So this is a collaborative approach to critiquing your project, your plans for the project. And then, because of the particular circumstances that we're in, we know that many of you are going to be working with students who are back at school face-to-face. Some of you are going to be working blended, and some of you are just going to be working online for the foreseeable future. So our pal from Melbourne, Chris Hart, Director of Unstuck Learning, has got many years of doing not just projects, but also to do them online. And Chris will be running a session with you about how to use the technology so that it supports your projects. We'll also be discussing what we call social enterprise and projects, how to ensure that your projects actually have some meaning in students' lives. And then we'll do our own evaluation. We'll get you to reflect upon the experience that you've had over the 6 weeks. So as I say, in between sessions, there'll be a little bit of homework that we'll be asking you to do, but we would expect that after these 6 modules, you will have your initial plans to do your projects with students and you'll be ready to go. In addition to the course though, we are providing some exclusive tools. We've been lucky enough to be working with some fantastic leaders of what we call Work That Matters. People like Larry Rosenstock, the founder of High Tech High, Ron Berger, who many of you will know through Ethic of Excellence and the Expeditionary Learning Schools. And we've got interviews that you can only get by signing up to the course. Also, we've developed our own planning tools, which you'll get access to, and we've got a whole heap of further readings, which again will be exclusive to people who are on the course. Finally, and this is a kind of additional extra, some people want to have a little bit of support when they get into actually delivering their projects with the students. So we'll be offering that as a potential add-on. That's the program. The numbers are starting to fill up, and we are limiting the numbers quite severely because we want to make sure this is a quality experience. We'll be delivering it via Zoom, and I know many of you are zoomed out, but we are keeping the numbers small because we found that with Zoom, there is a limit to the number of people who can usefully engage with the process. So if you want to register for the course, here's the bit.ly address. Please don't wait to sign up because we'd hate it if you've lost your place. As I say, we'll be running a European cohort, and we've already got people from Spain signed up, people from Ireland, people from the UK. So it's a great social and networking experience. And the Australian cohort will have Aussies. We think there may be some people from the Far East joining, and there'll be some New Zealanders joining the process as well. So please don't leave that too late so that you secure your place. And we'll be running the courses in September, possibly into October with one of the cohorts. Okay, that's it. We'll look forward to working with you. Thanks very much for watching.